Researchers at Brighton University have had a major impact on the form and content of design history across the world, both in terms of research and in terms of teaching. Their work has shaped the content and design of modules, of whole programmes, both at BA level and at master's level. I'm Cheryl Buckley. I'm Professor of Fashion and Design History at the University of Brighton.
We believe that design history is very important because it can inform debates about design that are both current and reflecting on the lessons that might be learned from the past. Not least important, perhaps today, is the place of design in the academic sphere. Our designers in Britain are known throughout the world. But we're also concerned when researching and studying the history of design at Brighton of its importance in terms of society as large and, of course, the whole cultural ambience in which we're all engaged in the media and beyond today.
With my colleague Professor Jeremy Ainsley and with Jonathan Woodham, we've just launched a new research cluster, Internationalising Design History. This builds on over 40 years of research and practice in the history of design at the University of Brighton. This also draws into the cluster 20-odd academic staff who have been working for many years in this area. The important thing here is the international scope of this cluster. It's basically building research in the history of design around the globe, and it really means that Brighton is at the forefront of this new development.
It's not just in the academic sphere that the history of design at the University of Brighton is important. There have been many collaborations with museums and collections around the world, which has brought the subject into the public domain. The general public, of course, have visited many of these important exhibitions.
Design history is important. On the one hand, it's a specialist subject. Obviously, designers need it to understand where they've come from, and I think historians need it to be able to understand how material culture fits in with other kinds of history. But I think the general public need to know what made the environment they live in as it is, and why we live with the things we do, and what they were like in the past. I think Brighton has developed a very particular approach, which is to see design objects in their context, their full context. And they've worked with a number of different countries. I know Scandinavian countries, East European countries, and I think the approach that they've been supporting has really moved into those areas as well. And the fact that Brighton have been very active in getting an archive together in design history has been really important. I've had lots of PhD students who've used that archive really, really extensively, and it's really helped them. So it's getting design history out there. I think perhaps overall the key is that design history, as it emerged at Brighton, and I think has emerged elsewhere as well as a consequence, works on several fronts. It works, as I say, training people to become historians, also feeds into practice of design, also feeds into the museum world, and feeds into the public as well. So it's having that breadth, I think, that's key.
The relationship between the Victoria and Albert Museum and the University of Brighton began in 1997 when the University of Brighton got a grant from the British Academy. And from that grant, they appointed Jane Pavitt, a design historian, to come and work here in the Victoria and Albert Museum and develop curation in contemporary product design. Now, Jane curated quite a few very important exhibitions here for the V&A, which really pushed on how exhibitions can be done, how you can think about using objects to tell stories. What's very special about design history at Brighton is that it has a kind of third way approach sometimes. So design history, on the one hand, can be thought of as a discrete academic subject, or on the other hand, it can be a way that practitioners can learn more about their history, more about their background. But I think also it has this third way approach, which is about thinking about the skills and knowledge that design historians bring or build for themselves can be really useful for looking at the way in which policy is done, thinking strategically, also thinking about the future.
Now, the V&A is really well known for its exhibitions. Its public program is absolutely the most public-facing part of the museum, and Brighton has historically provided us with a lot of expertise, a lot of new thinking about our presentation of the history of design. And fellows from the University of Brighton have given us some of our most informed curatorial approaches to some of our most exciting exhibitions in the past. But we've tried to move beyond that into new kinds of inquiry, particularly thinking about the place of design in society, the place of making, the place of objects, And I think those academic fields and social and political areas of research have really been put on the agenda over the last few years and added to the headline exhibition program. And for that, we've depended very heavily on the help of experts like Guy and like Jane.
I've worked on a number of projects which have taken the museum to be represented, for example, in a parliamentary inquiry to do with design in public services. I developed a series of talks around social design and a series of talks and debates. And more recently, I set up the monthly Design Culture Salon. The museum provides a really interesting and important bridge between the university and the wider public. After all, we have over 3 million visitors and over 26 million visitors to our website. With the design culture salons, we find a very useful way to bring academics, including academics from the University of Brighton, to come and speak on panels and engage with other interested members of the public in these kinds of debates.
A distinctive feature of design history research at the University of Brighton is its wider impacts, socially, educationally and culturally. This has ranged from design policy to design history curriculum development to museum exhibition planning and archival management. So for over 30 years, design researchers at the University of Brighton have shaped and formed design thinking, both in Britain and abroad. The establishment of the new Internationalising Design History Research Initiative at Brighton now forms a focus and a springboard for future development.